Look at this side of the room compared to this
Don't
side.
mind this side of the room.
Right, Hazel,
Yes,
what day is it today?
Wednesday. It's the pre-launch day.
Pre-launch
Pre-book launch day. Oh, I'm always terrified of these. I'm so scared.
Oh God, do you remember when it...
Yeah, just did it.
On my birthday when
Okay, here we
Hazel
go.
has just hit 300%! Yay! Woo! And we're about to do a Waterstones interview
Yes.
with me as the interviewer. I've written some great...
One more, take two. Here we go.
great questions.
I've got some great questions.
I'm a good interviewer. I promise. We are late, but not good enough. We aren't. We've got 5 minutes. What's your contact?
Hi, Will. So sorry to bother you. It's 7:30 and that password isn't currently working.
I see your hand shaking.
Yes! We are in. Get into Waterstones Instagram account. Excellent. Okay, we are just about ready to roll. We're only going to be a few minutes late, which everybody always is on Instagram. Okay, thank you.
Great stuff. Bye,
Bye, Will. Bye. Okay.
Is it time?
I think it is. I'm going to leave some books here so we can pick them up.
This is good. This is good. Second connection. You are now live! Hey everyone. How's it going? Let me just get my iPad. Okay! I see you're slowly arriving. Welcome to the Out of Love pre-launch interview with me, Dodie, and someone else who I'll introduce in 1 second. Quick pause to let everyone arrive. Sorry, we're a little bit late. There was some commotion, we couldn't log in. Got a bunch of people joining. Hello everyone, I hope you're all as excited as I am to be talking about this special book. I love this book so much. If you don't know who I am, my name is Dodie. I'm a musician and I am this book's #1 fan alongside the other running competitor who is currently Aisling B. So it's a pretty cool club to be in. So I tell you what, without further ado, let me introduce the author of Out of Love, my best friend, Hazel Hayes! Yay!
That was fascinating.
Was it
to
good?
watch. Oh, you're so
My
nervous.
heart's
I can hear. We're both so nervous.
Yeah.
We're shaking. We've been running around trying to get everything together. Literally, I'm like, oh darling.
really nervous.
It's so beautiful. Dodie set all of this up while I was in my room freaking out and putting on makeup, and I came out and just found it this way.
Yeah.
But there's cameras set up because
Yes,
we're
we've
recording for YouTube because this is going to go on my channel tomorrow. We've
A
got
double-
a mic and we've got lights.
Double
and
camera situation.
Hazel. Hi everybody!
How
Look at all the
are
little
you?
love hearts and comments and things. Hello, I see you all. I can't read the comments from here.
I can, we got
But
some
I see
hearts,
that they're happening.
We got a wave emoji, we got hey.
Hey.
Hazel, I hate to
what?
tell you, but you've just got a notification saying that your time limit is almost up for Instagram.
I put a limit on social media because I was on it too much.
Right,
So
I think we're gonna have to change that.
we're gonna have to just change
Okay.
that. So
Will you give us literally...
just hold that thought. Sing happy birthday.
Yeah, wash your hands.
Go wash your hands.
Go wash your hands.
Right. Settings. App limits. None.
We're back.
We're back. Are we back?
everyone
Let us
still
know
here?
if we're back. Leave us a
Let
comment.
me
Let
know.
us know.
I'm so sorry.
Hi.
Hazel has to look after herself.
Anyway, should we talk about a book?
Yeah, right, let's talk about a book. Okay, so, Hazel,
Yes.
I've prepared a bunch of questions. Do you want to just generally talk about how you are before I open this?
How am I? I'll be shocked if I get through this without vomiting on something. If I do, I'll go that way.
Oh yeah, I hope it's not
I
me.
promise. I'm so nervous. I'm also not. I get very nervous before literally every big event, whether it's a birthday or a flight, or particularly like if I'm going to be on set, if I'm directing something, I always just, my body goes into fight or flight, and it's like my brain is going, no, everything's absolutely fine. You're in your house, you got Dodie here, it's cool. But my body's going,
Talk about how weird it is to have a thought like in your mind, and even if it's a subconscious one, and like even get distracted from it, but still feel nervous.
Yeah.
And be like, why are you doing
Why?
that? Right. Okay. I love this book so much. I think it's my favorite book of the year. I guess it's just stunning. It will break you. It's a love story told in reverse. So from end to beginning. So by the time you get to the beginning, you will just die of heartbreak. I'm going to read you a little bit. Where you talk about writing.
Okay.
So this is on page 60, everyone. I think it's Pissing on Sticks, where you're around your families in Dublin and everyone's talking about their stuff, their children, etc. And you're trying to offer up your thoughts on your writing career. Yes, I work from home, and yes, I sit on my arse all day and write, but it's not that easy. I tell them to be creative. It's exhausting, pouring your heart out onto a page, building entire worlds and people to inhabit them, motivating yourself to write every day, running a business alone, worrying about where your next paycheck will come from, pitching your precious ideas to people who probably won't remember you, blah blah blah, and so on. So as I mentioned, I was there when you were writing the book.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, it was a very difficult process for you. Mental health is a huge theme in the book anyway. The protagonist sort of goes through her own struggles, and we'll talk about that a lot later. But yeah, I just wanted to ask how your own mental health affected your writing, and writing affected your mental health, and how you handled the pressure of a deadline against your sanity.
Ooh, didn't.
Yeah.
It's probably the short answer.
Yeah.
That extract is interesting. Just to put that in context, that's from a chapter called Pissing on Sticks, which is about motherhood, I suppose. The overarching theme is motherhood, and get that wine into you, you need it. And it's sort of a point when the protagonist goes home, she's with her family, all of whom have kids, and she suddenly realises she can't quite complain about her life sitting around on her ass all day writing when these people have actual humans to take care of. It just suddenly feels like you feel quite guilty complaining about that kind of thing, because it's like, oh, some people have real problems. But it is really difficult. And I think I had to, that's my Saoirse Ronan impression, just really like girls. I had to remind myself that when I'm directing, I'm so sympathetic towards an actor who has to go there as such. Like, I've had to direct people through really, really difficult scenes where they deal with huge themes, you know, even as big as death and suicide and heartbreak and grief, and like when you're in a room with someone and you're trying to simultaneously get them to that place but keep them safe at a safe distance from that place, you have to be very, very sympathetic and very caring and nourishing and just give them all the time and space that they need. And so I was kind of trying to do that for myself and remind myself every time I had that thing of like, oh, don't be so silly, Hazel, you're just writing. There's something really wrong with you. Like, look around, you're in a room and you're safe. It's like, well, no, I'm not, because in my head, I'm in the middle of this really traumatic experience. And in order to get that on the page, I have to go there in my head. So it can be quite a lot. I mean, obviously, depending what you're writing. And usually I'm writing very dark horror where I just torture my characters, and it's actually quite fun. But this time the character was sort of inspired by me, so it felt like I was torturing myself sometimes. Yeah. I mean,
you wrote about like panic attacks and depressive episodes and really stressful situations and like, I don't know, like complex relationships with your family even. And yeah, I don't know, I just saw you sort of like dip into that world for a while and emerge and go, I don't feel very well. But yeah, I just thought it was really, really inspiring how you had a lot of pressure on your back in these deadlines, and yet you had to just be like, guys, I'm taking my time, and like push back against those people being like, you're just writing.
You're just writing, just get it out. Yeah, and like, I mean, Jesus, I had good people around me. I had a lot of Maya's, which you will understand once you've read the book. Maya is the protagonist's best friend, who is like her soft place to land, and I had you. I real life Maya.
That's funny because I love her and I'm like, it probably is a bit of me.
Yeah, she's absolutely, she's an amalgamation of a lot of people in my life and definitely inspired by them. The people who you can turn to, the people who make those days that bit easier and who, like, you still know, I mean, even now I'm writing a slight announcement, I've kind of said it already, but I'm writing the script for the pilot for the series, which has been optioned, which is amazing.
That's insane.
And actually there's going to be a little bit more of an announcement about that tomorrow. But until then, so a production company has optioned the right to the series, which does not mean that a network has bought it yet. It just means that we're developing it and we'll then try sell it to a network. So I'm writing that script, and it means I'm gone back into it. And there's been nights quite recently I've come out of that and Dodie's like, I know this, we're here again, you know, we've been here before, and I think I'm getting better. Like, I'm not going to say I handled it perfectly, I don't think I did. I think there's a lot more I could have been doing, and if any of you out there are writing or trying to write something that requires you to really go to a dark place, it's tough, and there's so much self-care involved, and I think you have to cut yourself so much slack. and just know that at the end of the day you're going to be a zombie, and you really can't give anything to anyone. You've nothing left to give. So I had a lot of people like you around me who were understanding about that, and that was great. But also I was trying to do my day job and make YouTube videos and movies and everything at the same time, which was quite stressful. But also I was going through therapy,
processing it every day,
which was, oh my god, I'd forgotten about this. Yeah, that was a lot. It was kind of a double-edged sword, because so the year I started to properly write the book, I was diagnosed with BPD and PTSD. Yeah, big up at anyone who's dealing with that shit. And sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse on this Waterstones or anything. I had started to see a therapist and was going through something called trauma processing, which I won't go into in full detail. I will just say it is a waking nightmare.
So you can sort of like guess what you had to do.
You have to relive the worst experiences you've ever experienced, to rewire them in your head. And I had a wonderful therapist who really helped me through that, and then subsequently started to help me with the book, because the stuff I was dealing with in therapy was then stuff I was talking about in the book, and each began to inform each other, to the point that it got really weird, because the book is written in reverse. So it begins with the couple breaking up and ends with them meeting. And there were chapters towards the end of the book which were technically earlier in the protagonist's life, where she had a different view of mental health and her family and that kind of thing than she did later in the book. So it wasn't until I sent it to the editor that the editor kind of came back and went, it's weird, it's like she's more sure of herself and knowledgeable towards the end of the book, but she's younger than she was at the start. And it's because I had been going through therapy and these things were more informed, so I then had to go back and kind of rewrite it. But it was fascinating how one kind of informed the other. But yeah, I would say get a professional to help you with that stuff if you're writing.
We all need a Nadia, am I right, everyone? Alright, moving on the topic of mental health.
Yes.
I am someone who struggles with depression, a little anxiety, but also derealization.
Lovely. Little cocktail.
I feel like derealization and dissociation is actually quite a theme in the book. Like it really does crop up a lot, like in Bodies, when there's like the car thing and she sort of just like disconnects and really just freezes, but also in good moments, like when she learns about Maya's pregnancy. Spoiler, kind of, not really, you learn about it in the first chapter.
There's no spoilers in the book, really.
No, not really, because you read it. Exactly. Well, kind of. And speaking of Paris, like for me it's uncomfortable reading that chapter, because it just really like sort of like pinpoints this dissociation, derealization feeling. Like it's just so spacey, and I would love to talk about how you went describing something so specific and why that chapter in particular, why Le Petit Mort is so spacey.
That is the fourth chapter in which some stuff goes down that sort of becomes a turning point for the relationship. Why that chapter in particular? I think, oh gosh, because that chapter is the end of Act 2 in reverse.
Wow, great. Love that. Okay.
So lately, every time we're watching a film, we talk about the act structure.
I've learned so much.
And Dodie's always like, this is the end of Act 1, this is the end of Act 2. I know
it's a montage, it's Act 2.
If it's a montage, it's in Act 2. So we've been like talking a lot about story structure and act structure. I had to be aware of that while writing this, but it had to work both ways. So I haven't done this yet, but it is my hope that you could begin on the last chapter and go backwards, and it should make sense.
That's in one of my questions.
It's coming up, we'll come back to that, don't worry, I haven't forgotten your question. So the reason I think I went so hard in that particular chapter is that kind of is their end of Act 2. It's the dark night of the soul for her, for like their situation. And then there is kind of another end of Act 2 in Splinter later, so it kind of works both ways, where you have Summer Skin in the middle, which is just this like lovely
that's coming up.
breath of fresh air from the rest of it. But in that chapter, basically, Theo, her boyfriend, is he's living and working in Paris for a couple of months, and things between them just have not been going particularly well. She's felt really distant from him, and not just physical distance because he's away. It was kind of happening for a long time, and so she goes to Paris to surprise him.
It does not
go as planned, and she ends up spending an awful lot of time by herself at a time when she's not doing great. Like, we know that she had seen a therapist at some point in her life to deal with anxiety, and that it had helped to some degree, but she's starting to slip again. And I think I wanted to capture that thing of that probably most of you know, where you don't just wake up one day and go, oh, my depression's back. Like that never happens, or your anxiety or BPD or derealization or whatever it is you're struggling with. It creeps in. 100%,
and that chapter does it so well. Yeah, so right.
Thank you. So I wanted to try and capture that sense of like just random sort of mundane moments suddenly being overtaken by the stuff going on in her head, where that feeling where like inside your brain things are on fire but no one can see the fire, and everyone's just acting like everything's okay, and you want to scream at them, my head's on fire. And you feel absolutely mad. But it doesn't just happen, and you don't always remember your training. You don't always remember, oh well, when I was in therapy I knew this thing about it. It happens over the course of months, and then it takes quite a while to then admit it and realize it, that you're back there. So yeah, that was really her chapter of there's a lot there's some self-destructive behavior in that chapter.
Yes,
there is. She does things that she in her right mind probably wouldn't have done, but she's lonely and she's sad and she's confused and she's honestly just a bit of a mess and just desperately in need of some comfort and affection, and she's not getting that from Theo, and that's not to excuse anything she does, but that chapter is her unraveling, I think.
Yeah, I would hard agree. Yeah, that really makes sense. How you're right, it is a really clever way of sort of creeping in the like depression before you even know what it is yet. I just want to point out, like, all of the comments have been so great so
we've got
far.
So many. Oh my god.
Someone said earlier, I can't wait. No, it was I'm ready to hurt, which I really relate to. I think that's great. A lot of people are like, okay, I really need to read this. A lot of people relating to the mental health comments. And then someone talking about my feet, so I put my arm across my legs.
Yes, we had great intentions of putting heels on and getting to windy. Just fully barefoot. There we go.
Right, the writing is in first person.
Yes.
Protagonist goes in depth about her own brain and personal struggles, and even in the first chapter we see her sort of playing games, leaving heels out on the side to make Theo jealous, telling lies, snooping on phones. The reader is hopefully aware that the story is somewhat biased or unreliable. Would you talk a bit about that and why you chose to do that?
Yeah, I think you definitely have to go into this knowing that to some degree it's a case of unreliable narrator. And that's not because she's intentionally lying to anybody, it's because you're hearing what's in her head, and often we lie to ourselves, or we just don't know yet. So whatever she's saying and doing, you're sort of being given firsthand without a filter. Yeah, she doesn't even know it herself sometimes. Yeah. Of course she's seeing things from a certain perspective. And if you were to hear this entire story from Theo's perspective, I'm sure it would be very
entirely different. Yeah.
I even have had people sort of suggest, like, maybe the sequel could be his, and I'm like, no, I don't, like, I kind of don't want to do that, because firstly it's the exact same story, but and I would have had to write it knowing that, with that in mind, and I could have, but that wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to tell it just, I guess, assuming that the readers are clever enough to know that anyone who's telling their own story, and we all have done this, you meet up with your friends and you bitch about your ex and you say, oh, he did this and he did that, or she did this, she did that, and you're willing to sort of not be thoroughly objective because you're coming from a place of emotion. And I think your friends understand, like, that's probably not exactly how it went down, and we all know there's three sides to every story, his side, her side, and the truth. Something that's really interesting actually that I'm finding really hard to adapt into the script is that, because there's a bit in the first chapter, as you mentioned, so the first chapter is about they've broken up and Theo is essentially coming to collect his stuff from their apartment. She's packed it up for him, and it begins with him arriving, and we sort of go back through the journey of their breakup while she's making a cup of tea for them, and that sounds like nothing happens in the first chapter, but it kind of covers the whole span of time from when he left that first night to now that he's back to get his stuff, and the journey, the emotional journey that she's been on. And yeah, she at one point notices him notice a pair of red heels that she's left on the ground, and everything else is quite tidy, but there's a sense of her manipulation there, because she says, I wanted him to see those heels, I left them out on purpose, I wanted him to wonder where I'd been, if I was on some night out, if I was on a date, if I brought someone home, if I'd had sex with that person. And I wanted him to remember the time I wore those red heels for him in red lingerie, and I wanted that thought to cut him. I'm probably somewhat quoting and half paraphrasing it. And that's really telling about her and about the places that you go to when you're in that kind of turmoil. Like on a regular day, she's a good-hearted, good-natured person, and she wouldn't think these things. She's not manipulative. She's not horrible and cutting and cruel. But when you're kind of pushed to that point by somebody, it's kind of, I wanted to kind of show the things that we think, but we don't necessarily tell people.
Yeah, I really feel like, yes, that's so brave to put that in. It's so honest and incredibly relatable. We have all been there. Okay, this is a fun question. There's a chapter that really stands alone in the book for me. It almost feels like its own short story within this bigger story. It's the one where Theo actually isn't in it too much. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Gosh, I'm getting teary. It's really, I just had a weird moment where I was like, my friend Dodie's interviewing me about I wrote a book.
I know! It's like framing this so well.
And this is my favourite chapter, and you're about to ask about it, and I just got all like, yeah.
The chapter I'm talking about is a chapter called Summer Skin. The theme of bisexuality is subtle in a few other chapters. I know she mentions it to Theo. There's obviously the mess that happened in Paris. I won't go into that. But Summer Skin feels like the complete opposite of that chapter. To me, it's quite literally warm, a welcome break in anxious chapters. It really explores the reality of that and captures a moment in time that maybe a lot of queer people, or maybe even bi-curious people, have experienced. Will you talk about where Lena came from and why you included that story in the way that it is?
Oh man, Summer Skin. I don't know if I can talk about this without crying. Summer Skin was... Summer Skin was my safe place when I wrote this book. Oh my god, we're just gonna cry for the rest of it. It's fine, because Captain Marvel says it's fine. Yes.
Someone just put, gay!
It's a bit gay. I also slightly don't want to give things away, but I think it's an important chapter to talk about. So yes, I am a bi person, and I didn't plan a lot of things about this book, but I definitely didn't plan for that chapter. I think a lot of the time when I'm writing stuff, I put a character in a position and I just see what happens. And that was very much the case with Summer Skin. I think I needed a chapter that was just for her. There's a chapter called Canadian Geese later on. It's very much about her relationship with home. And this chapter is about her relationship with her sexuality. And I think that's an important thing to say about the book, is that it is like ostensibly about a couple, but it's not really about them. It's about her journey in the relationship. And part of that is Summer Skin, which I'm dodging the question because I don't want to get emotional. It was my soft place to land. It was my safe place when I wrote, because so many of the chapters are difficult, and I was pulling on real experiences that were very hard to do with past breakups and grief and abandonment and losing people and family issues and depression and anxiety. And I promise it's a light-hearted book. But yeah, a lot of the chapters, even towards the end when they are madly in love, that was hard, because I was trying to remember times in relationships for me that are now over when we were in love, and it was an exploration of that. So Summer Skin, every single time, and I noticed this, every single time I went back to it and I had to edit over and over and over, I would always get to it and sort of just breathe, because it was like, oh, I'm here again, I'm safe. Lena is here and I'm okay, and this is going to be a nice place for me to be mentally for a couple days while I work on it. Yeah, I don't want to say that like it was intentional in the sense that like I was like, it's really important for me to write a book about my queerness right now. I wasn't trying to say anything or do anything for anyone else necessarily. It was just something I had to write. Like it just had to come out, and this character just kind of came out of nowhere. And I fell so madly in love with her.
So did I.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will actually. To the point that, and I've said this to you.
Yeah, you have.
This is full blown insane. I recently went through quite a bad patch and was like, what am I going to do with my life? Everything just seemed so messy and like just not tangible and not real, and like, what am I going to do? And the thought actually occurred to me in my real human brain that said, it's fine, you could just go see Lena. And I thought about turning up at her door. She's not real.
She's not real.
She doesn't exist. She's fiction. So much of this is fiction, and But what I really, really loved was that my writing partner, who I write a lot of scripts with, Paul Nevesey, pre-COVID, went for dinner, and he was asking about various things, and he brought up Summerskin and asked about like my experience, and I was like, that's not real. And he couldn't get his head around it. He was like, that is insane to me, that like I know there's some truth in this book and some of it's fiction and I can't tell what's what.
Same.
And that's my favourite bit, is when people who really know me don't know.
Yeah,
people will come and go, did that happen? Did that happen?
Yeah. Nina is, she feels very real, I think, and when you read the book you will just fall in love with
I think a lot of people will relate to her, and with the protagonist's struggle, I guess, because that I always say this, that like the book itself is fiction, the events themselves are fiction, but the feeling behind them is real. And that is a very real feeling for me, as someone who sort of fell into a straight relationship when I was 17 and ended up in relationships all the way pretty much up till now, back to back with men. I never really got to explore that side of my sexuality, and I'm only now at 35, oh my god, she's writing things, like I've had experiences but not a relationship with a woman, and that is something that I kind of regret not exploring earlier in my life. And that was the feeling that I wanted to put behind the chapter.
Let's talk about Theo.
Let's talk about Theo.
Uncommunicative, repressive, resentful, but also sometimes wonderful Theo.
Yeah.
Why do you think people who read this book so far, men included, all relate to dealing with this Theo in their life?
Because he's real, he's a real person, and we all know him.
We all know him.
But I think, like, weirdly, a lot of the characters in this book are very stereotypical, but like just really well fleshed out stereotypes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, they're kind of like.
But the stereotypes for a reason.
Yeah, because we all know probably a lot of these kinds of people, and that's why the dedication at the back of the book is to the kinds of people that appear in the book, as opposed. Don't worry, I'm not shitting on your question. I keep cursing. Oh, he meant well, bless him. He really tried.
Yeah.
He really tried.
He tried.
I think what. This is another thing that it was like, this really isn't for anyone else but me, and it is now, but when I was writing it, when I wrote Muscle Memory, which is the very first chapter where they break up, that was never intended to be anything other than a short story that it was like when you need to vomit and it just comes out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You have no choice in the matter. It's happening. It's coming out, and that story just kind of poured out of me. And it was only quite a while later that I actually decided to expand it and for it to become a book. But Theo was who he was in that chapter, and I think when I decided to expand the world and like it be a larger story, it didn't feel right to me to just go from the breakup and talk about how she got over it, because while that was very interesting to me, it wasn't what I needed. Like, personally, I think I had been through quite a few breakups, and I often found myself thinking about, like, why were we in love? Why was I ever with that person? Like, because obviously you break up for a reason. Like, obviously when you break up, it's because you're just not functioning as a couple anymore. And one of the lines in this is that I wish I could tell you there was an inciting incident, some reason we ceased to function as a couple, but it was more like a slow creeping disdain, which is how so many relationships end. It's not just some big inciting incident and a big argument and it all ends in flames. It's often
so complex.
Yeah, slow and creeping and insidious, like the mental health stuff we were talking about. And I think that's what I wanted to explore was, I don't know, I guess as something for myself to kind of reassure myself maybe that these characters in my life had at one point been kind or been loving or been caring or been perfect, and just because someone isn't perfect for you, maybe they were perfect for a time, maybe that was the time that they were meant to be in your life, and then they've moved on, and that's okay that it hasn't lasted forever. So weirdly in writing this, I think I've kind of made peace with my Theos.
Wow.
Because you get back to the end beginning and they meet and he's so charming and lovely and besotted with her, and really for a while it's really good, and I think that that really kind of helped me see that, like, so many relationships that don't end well, it doesn't mean that they didn't begin well, and it doesn't mean that there wasn't a purpose in it for a time. But yeah, no, bless Theo. He comes across pretty bad in the first chapter.
He does, yeah.
He does, but so does anyone in a breakup. And that's why I wanted to include stuff about her and her slightly manipulative tendencies and going through his phone and all that kind of stuff. Like, you know, breach of privacy and you shouldn't be doing that. And while you can sympathise with her, I think you can kind of also sympathise with him as you go further back through the story and you realise what he's been through with her. It's just two people who are so desperately trying and just fucking it up because they've been raised by people who didn't do it right and they just didn't learn.
Yes, that's so true. Yeah, you will read about all of the complexities of their family as well.
And Jocelyn.
She's in here as well. Right, we're nearing the end. Two more. So the structure of the book, I should have put this at the beginning, but the structure of the book, as we know, is in reverse. I actually recommend once you're finished reading, as Hazel mentioned, like read it from back to front, and you'll get so many like little nuggets and smart things that Hazel's obviously put in because she's so very clever. Not only is it
snore.
I know, I heard that.
Did you hear the little snore?
It's very soft.
I watched Miss Congeniality the night, and since then I've been snorting like Sandra Bullock. I didn't mean it, but it happened.
Anyway, not only is the structure in reverse, like chapter to chapter, but within each chapter you kind of are like in a present moment, and then you flash back to a thought or another sort of moment in time. I would love for you to talk about how the heck you did that and you managed to not make the reader confused while reading it, because I wasn't.
Well, thanks. That's good to know.
Yeah.
I just felt like torturing myself.
Cool.
I thought I could tell a book just from beginning to end, but why do that when I could completely destroy my brain for 3 years?
Yeah.
So that's what happened there. I think, to be honest, that a lot of that came from my love of sci-fi.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because I like films that play with time. There's actually a reference in the book at one point to her reading Stories of Your Life, which the film Arrival was based on, and that whole film is the story and subsequently the film is about sort of if you knew the future, would you do things anyway? Like if you knew things were going to end in heartbreak, would you take the good with the bad? And that's a lot of what the whole book is about. So like Arrival is one of my favourite pieces of sci-fi.
I didn't even realise there's so much Arrival in there.
Yeah, and so many other things like Memento and other stories that play with time or get you to see something differently on a second viewing or second reading. And that's also why 500 Days is referenced in there, because I think I've watched 500 Days over the course of years, and every time I get something new from it, or I side with a different character, or I see their motivations differently. And that's what I guess I'm hoping will happen. I don't want to compare my work to that, but that's what I'm hoping will happen with this, is that you could read it at a certain point in your life and side with a different person, or understand them differently, or decide differently. You might think, yeah, I would do it even though I knew the heartbreak was coming, or you might be in a bad place and think, I don't ever want to do it again. So yeah, I'm hoping that it's the kind of book that you can come back to and will mean something different. But why did I decide to tell it that way? I don't fully know is the answer to most questions about my writing. I think because that's the way my brain works. Like you even know when I'm having a conversation. I was talking to my mum the other day and she brought up something and we went on tangents and ended up somewhere else about 45 minutes later, and I went, anyway, you were saying about this thing, and she was like, how do you remember where? Because I retrace it back to how it began. I'm interested in that thing that you were saying. Could we go back to that? And I think that's just how I work as a director and as a storyteller. You kind of have to see all the moving parts. Like when you're on set and you're in the middle of a scene that happens in the 4th episode of an 8-episode series, and you know that they have to get from here to here, and what everyone was wearing and what everyone was feeling, and whether it was dark or light outside, and all the different things that go into it, and emotionally where they're at. You're the one that the book stops at. So when the makeup person comes up and goes, have they got the scar on their face at this point? You know, when the lighting guy comes up and goes, have we moved into the blue at this point?
But how did you manage that?
I don't know.
Did you, like...
I've got a bit of a Rain Man thing when it comes to storytelling, I think, which I'm quite glad of. I just have... I'm able to kind of pull back and see things quite clearly without actually having to have it laid out in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
I never really, and I did, like, at some points I started to make kind of a chapter breakdown and put it together, but it actually began with the first chapter, then I wrote the second chapter, Pissing on Sticks, then I wrote the last chapter, 12 Pubs and Coppers.
Oh yeah!
And then I knew, it was similar to when I directed Prank Me, because that was a story about a guy who like goes, he has a breakdown and he's like, it's a kind of a villain origin story. So we have to begin with a guy who's at a certain point, and by the end he's just a murderous, horrible person. So you have to then know, well, if it ends here and it starts here, he has to be at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you have to know where he is on any given day.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of the same thing with this story, was that like I wrote the beginning and the end first, and then I had to get from there to there in a seamless sort of way that you would believe, I guess. And also because it's told through just like vignettes, it's just random moments or days or a couple months maybe or a year out of their life, but told with very specific moments in mind. So you kind of jump about in time but always going backwards, and then as you say, within the chapter you jump about in time as well. It's a bit, someone has described it to me as Tarantino, which I will take that, thank you. But it's a bit like that in the way it kind of jumps around. But it's just, I don't know, it's fun. It just makes things a bit different when you're writing it. It makes it interesting and horrible and really painstaking. But it makes it kind of interesting to have that extra layer of knowing that you have to tell the characters forward but the story backward. Like you have to get to know the characters and tell their arc in that direction, but the story has to go in that direction.
I can reference this now. It was very... Oh God, Sammy kind of...
Sammy Paul!
Sammy, not
get him
now,
on the
babe.
line.
I was going to say, I can reference this now. It's Very One Day by David Nichols.
You can reference that
because I read it. Who
Thank
actually
you.
complimented you on... congratulated you on the release of your book, who
Indeed.
actually can be... Oh my God, what is
Are you alright?
Yeah.
Sammy's really throwing Sammy Paul!
Actually, we compared your book to One Day by David Nichols.
Which was insane!
Which was insane! Because there's so many of like Hazel's Loves
Thank you, Aisling, so much.
Yeah, it's very familiar how like you sort of like revisit this relationship like at patches of time. Like it spans how long? How does it move?
4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But One Day was absolutely a big inspiration. And I've said that, and then to be compared to David Nichols, suffice to say my heart fell out my arse that day. But I like that. I like that when you're telling a story to just jump in on a little moment, as well as that. Like Brokeback Mountain is another kind of reference I think that had come up for me.
There's a lot of relationship sort of stories that do that, don't they?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that do it very well, and I only hoped that I could kind of grasp that sense of like just. Because that's how you see a relationship. You don't remember back to every day. You don't see the tapestry being woven together and then slowly unraveled again. You just see these sort of like, you remember days. You know, you remember that day we went to the park, and that time we were on a roller coaster, and that birthday or the funeral we were at. Like, you remember very specific pivotal moments, and sometimes they're really big ones, and sometimes they're just these mundane days where you were in the kitchen and they walked in and gave you a kiss and it meant something. And that's how you see, and particularly when you're grieving, in that moment of like when you're lying in bed that night and you're trying to just banish thoughts of them from your head so you can just sleep for a little bit, and that's how it comes to you. It's just these flashes and waves of like stuff that happens, some of which you don't even know that you remembered.
Someone just compared it to the last 5 years, which I absolutely, yes, it's very similar.
There's
like
been a bit of that.
The way the structure sort of like is played with.
I can't take credit, I hadn't actually seen that when I started writing it, but I have now seen it.
This comes to our last question. I'm trying to load up the other questions that people sent in on my email, but it's not really working, so you can talk a bit about this. Finally, the acknowledgements really struck me. It's such a smart way of thanking people without names. If obviously you might not know yet, but at the end, Hazel does the acknowledgements by thanking each character, like thanking all of the Theos in her life, or the Myers, or even all the Jocelyn's.
Even
like
all the Jocelyn's, man.
Like,
may they find peace.
This incredibly rude character that just fills you with like disgust and frustration. And I'm sort of fascinated by that. And are you really thankful for the hardship and stress you've been through that alive?
Am I really thankful for it? No, it's just something you put at the end of the book to make it seem poignant. Yeah. You have a look for your thing there while I walk on about this. So the acknowledgements, yes. I think the other thing was that I don't know, it was so many people contributed to the book. like so many people, whether it was just making me a sandwich one day, you know, when I was writing and forgot to eat, or calling me to check in on me, or, you know, being the therapist that I talked to about it and who coached me through it, or like, you know, the typical Academy Awards stuff, my agent, and lots and lots of different people contributed. And I think I was mostly just terrified that I was going to forget somebody, or like that you can't possibly thank everyone. And even there's so many people who they don't know me, they don't know anything about the book. They maybe were just the waiter who brought me a piece of cake the day I was working in a cafe, and it just soothed my soul a little bit while I wrote something difficult, and they don't even know what they contributed to. So it was hard to kind of pick out people, and when I looked back over the characters, it suddenly occurred to me that I had written a book with the archetype of pretty much everyone in my life in it. So whether that is current or past partners, or friends, therapists, teachers and guides, like Omar, her writing teacher, is in there as well, because like he's based on my actual writing teacher, Greg, from the Irish Writing Centre, who I don't even know if Greg knows that I have a book. I should probably email him.
You should probably email everyone who's like,
I probably should.
Yeah.
And then of course I could thank the therapist that I was with during this time, but then I had seen other therapists before that who had really, really helped me get to this point. And so I kind of wanted to thank all the Nadias, that's her therapist, rather than the one I was seeing at the time, whose name was Rachel. So yeah, it just suddenly occurred to me, I think I was on the tube one day, and I was like, oh, I'm doing this. So yeah, I think it just felt like not every book has that built in. So I was like, I want to use that, and anyone who knows. Yeah. Like reading it, you probably know what category you fall into.
I'm a Maya.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it was very smart and very heartfelt, and it made me cry again. It was just like an extra nugget. If the end chapter wasn't enough to break your heart, just like...
Because I love that shit.
I know.
I love when you've just read a book and you're destroyed. Like one day. If you've just finished one day. You
just want to wail forever.
You want more. You want them to like give me more hurt so I can cry.
You want more of them.
Like, and it's a healthy hurt. And that's something else I want to say, because I know we're seeing a lot of people being like, I'm ready to be hurt.
Yeah.
But like, in a good way, it's quite a healing pain. I think there's something like it's not a self-harmy kind of hurt. It's not in any way destructive.
It's a processing pain.
Yeah, I think it's knowing that someone else has felt the things you're feeling, that you're not alone, and it's being able to touch into tap into those times that you felt something. I think what I often find with the stuff that I read or watch that I connect to most is just they have found a way to put into words something that I couldn't. And when someone can do that for me, it allows me to then tap into the emotion and just feel it and process it. So I hope this does that for you.
It's beautiful. It really is. Have a look at some of the questions that you guys sent in. Yeah, have a little
Need this book in my life, Jessie. You absolutely do.
So ready. Everyone's been ready to do that. I saw someone comment
saying, you feel seen by someone else's work. That's it. That's so it.
Someone put Hazel's mind and a load of greater than.
Oh my god, pain, yes, so true.
Right, let's have a look.
How young is too young to read the book? That's a good question, I don't know.
That's a good question.
I would say probably you need a little life experience before you'll fully get it.
These are very nice. They're just a lot of people being very nice. How long was the process of writing your book? That's from Brianne.
I wrote the first chapter/story 3 years ago.
Yes, 2017.
And as I said, that was just a thing that I needed to get out of me. I began writing short stories years ago, and that's kind of how I learned my craft, and then I moved on to scripts and stuff, and for some reason this just felt like it needed to be a short story, so I wrote that. And then there was this huge gap, and then some people were asking, a book? And I was like, a book. And then I thought, yeah, okay, I'll adapt this. And then I think once I really was fully in it, a year and a half? Yeah, probably.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Ella O'Neill Music asks, what was the most exciting part of the writing publishing process?
This? Question mark?
Yeah, this does feel really like strange. It really, because I'm seeing a lot of people saying that they've read part of it already. Someone said that they read the acknowledgements and it broke them again.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. I think, this is nice because honestly, because the hard part's done now, because I'm not alone in a room hunched over a laptop, just sort of like wondering if every day is this crap. Like, you know what I mean? It's out in the world.
Not.
And I get to actually interact with humans, and because of COVID, obviously we're not doing the full tour, so I was quite sad about this. But I'm so excited that I get to do this stuff.
Yeah,
that's nice.
This is really nice.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this is kind of similar to the last question. How has writing Out of Love changed your perspective of relationships and love?
Yeah, as I said, I think it's helped me process some stuff. I think it's definitely helped me view relationships a little differently, to see them more as something that it's not a failure just because it ended. There's a bit in the first chapter where she calls her best friend and is like, I failed, and Maya's like, you can't fail, and it's like, that's like getting off a roller coaster and saying I failed because the ride is over. It's like you experienced it while it was happening.
That's bodies,
yeah. Oh, is it in bodies?
I think so.
Oh my god, I thought that was a muscle memory. Pretty sure there's a muscle memory bit.
Okay, well maybe I got that wrong. I thought it was when she was like, you don't
actually, I think you'll find out that's in chapter 3.
I thought it was when they sit down at the pub.
Oh god, it could be. Anyway, yes, so it has changed my perspective on relationships. That doesn't mean it doesn't bloody hurt when it's happening, though. I'm saying this from a standpoint of out of it.
Betty has asked, how did you come up with the name of your protagonist?
Well, Betty.
What name?
The protagonist is actually unnamed. Why did that happen? No real reason, except that I wrote that chapter and realised when I got to the end of it that she didn't have a name. And decided that some part of me had made that decision for me. Mm-hmm. I listened to a lot of Elizabeth Gilbert, both excellent writers. But Elizabeth Gilbert talks about creativity a lot and about how she sees us as sort of vessels for creativity, and it's quite a beautiful way of looking at it, that like it sort of happens through us sometimes. So sometimes people ask me, why did you do a thing? And I'm like, I'm honestly not that clever. It just happened that way. Mm-hmm. And this was one of those sort of happy mistakes, I think, because I wrote it from the first person. She didn't really need a name as such. And then when I decided to expand it, I decided to keep her unnamed. And I think that was because I wanted her experience to be kind of universal. And while there's so many characters that I think of and I love and I will name, you know, there's Katniss and Ellen Ripley and the Bride, and now we have Marianne, of course. And you think of them and you associate a name, and that's wonderful. And maybe when we adapt the series, she will have a name, or maybe we'll keep it a bit Fight Club and she won't. I decided I wanted people to kind of be able to imprint on her, and by leaving her nameless, I was leaving the door open for readers to do that. And also, a lovely happy accident happened wherein in the last chapter she is literally dressed as an angel for this nativity Christmas sort of 12 pubs party. Anyone who's Irish will know what 12 pubs is. She's dressed as an angel, and for that reason, when she meets Theo, he kind of nicknames her Angel, and throughout their relationship refers to her as that. And so I call her Angel, but that's not actually her name. I don't know what her name is. And also that was kind of a happy accident because
someone said like Fleabag.
Yeah, a little bit like that actually. I think, it just kind of kept her anonymous in my head. It kept her this like slightly ambiguous character, and it definitely separated her from me as well. It's really funny now, even as I'm developing the script recently, one of the producers called her Hazel, and I was like, no, she's not me. But yeah, I've been listening to a lot of Alain de Botton, who's a French philosopher, and he was talking about, I was listening to this podcast years ago, which I've recently revisited, where he's talking about the romantics and how romanticism has basically destroyed love. And one of the reasons why is that it sort of paints every person as angelic, as perfect, as like saintly. And if you believe that about yourself or another person, there's no hope, because everyone is fundamentally nuts. And when you can kind of own you're crazy and communicate you're crazy to somebody else, that's when the real stuff starts happening, and the real healthy stuff starts happening. And so it was kind of a slight nod to the romantics who view characters as that. And the way that Theo calls her Angel, it's almost like he's Evan, oh my god, he kind of puts her on a pedestal, and I guess it's a bit like 500 Days in that way, that he has these expectations of her, but she is just flawed, and she's just human and a bit broken, and needs a lot of healing as well, and it's almost like he doesn't see that.
Someone said Fleabag is all of us, and I believe that Angel, not Angel, is all of us. I believe that. Someone just said, what is this? Someone just said any tips for writing. That was from Jason. So just like something generic.
Tips for writing. Take writing classes. Honestly, write. Just. I think the reason I say take classes is because it gave me an excuse to write, even when I wasn't being paid to do it. There was no end in sight. There was no published date or anything like that. A long time before any of that came about, it was just weekly classes, and it was being in a room full of people who all wanted to write and wanted to be better, and there was no judgment. You never, like, you would bring a piece to class and you never had to feel embarrassed about it because you were all learning. And it was really wonderful to have, firstly, a good teacher, and secondly, a room full of other humans who cared and who were studying the craft themselves. And to have a reason every week to sort of hand in an assignment, whether that was just a one-pager or, like, slight aside, and I'll talk about this more fully another time, but some of the chapters in this are based on short stories that I wrote easily nearly 10 years ago now, that I just had scraps of lying around.
That's
like
so
Summer
helpful.
Skin and Canadian Geese definitely came from random ideas that I'd had a really long time ago, and I never would have wrote them if I didn't have a reason to kind of turn up every week with something. So yeah, I would say take a class, or at least start a little group of people where you kind of encourage each other to write and critique each other, not criticize, critique each other's work.
Cool. I love that. So if we could do a podcast down.
Can we do a podcast? Sure. Who wants to sponsor our podcast?
Can
That's
I
what
ask
the world needs, isn't it? Two more white women talking about stuff.
a self-indulgent question? If Out of Love was a dodie song, which one would it be?
Don't do this. Probably sick of losing soulmates.
Yeah. Probably Bish Bash Boy.
Probably
that one.
Oh.
I would say it was all of them because
Probably a
They're all
mix
about-
of Sick of Losing Soulmates and When and Arms Unfolding.
that sounds. Yeah, you're right.
Ow!
That's a mental health in there.
What a cocktail!
I love it. What is this?
What is this? I love those comments.
Let me see. Do you feel heavier or lighter now that you've finished writing it?
Oh, so much lighter. I mean, earlier, to continue the analogy, I compared it to needing to vomit.
Yes.
You all know how you feel
Got it out.
after a good vom.
Great, well that's easy. Right.
There you go,
We really haven't got long, so I'm going to choose one last one. Do you think you'll ever write a book again?
I think this is comparable to someone who's just, well, I haven't done this, but either of these things, but you know, someone who's just had a baby or run a marathon.
Yeah.
And someone's like, do you want to do it again? And they're like, no. Why would I want to do that? That was awful.
Yes.
But then inevitably they probably do because you get the itch. I mean, I'm writing the script now, and that I'm back into writing mode. So I'm always going to be writing, and I think, to be honest, I don't have a choice. I mean, personally, I need to write. I need to scratch the itch. So yeah, it's probably, I am thinking about a sequel, but it probably won't be a sequel as such, but might feature the same characters, or maybe a certain someone from a certain chapter that we all love.
That we all love. But we'll
Yeah,
see. We'll see about that. Right, lads. Thank you so much for joining. All 500, 600 of you. Thank you so much for staying. Thank you for all your comments. It's been really interesting to read all of them. And yeah, please buy Out of Love by Hazel Hayes. You can get it on the Waterstones
Where is it?
website.
I'll show you.
Yes.
Show you, this is it. Oh, and the beautiful cover design is by Anna Morrison. She's a stunning designer. I love it. I love the motif of the hands, and she also has done lots of other sketches for me, so thank you for that.
Right, thank you so much for joining.
you.
Goodbye, thanks for your questions. You're welcome. So long, farewell.
Bye.
Yes. Right, download video.
That was fun.
So good.
I feel so much calmer. I actually feel so much better about tomorrow night now because
Easy.
that's still going. Hi.
Alright, lads.
We've just finished that.
How do you feel? My thumb bleed halfway through. I bit it and it was bleeding, and I was like holding it on the side, which is typical me. Brilliant.
Well done. Well done, you.
Oh my God, did you like my questions?
Yes, that was so perfect. There she goes.
Oh my god.
That was so
Can I do
perfect.
it? Do I share it to... Oh, Matthew's just texting. Do I share it to IGTV? Is that really wrong?
Yes.
Choosing a thumbnail. God, I look really awful in most of these.
You don't look awful. You're beautiful.
Thank you. Oh, the whole thing's frozen. But I downloaded it.
We downloaded it.
I did download it. I did download it. Oh. I did download it. I did.
You did. I saw you do that.
It's not there though, so...
No. Okay. There was nothing you could have done. I watched that happen. It just fully. Don't worry. It's not the end of the world. Did it thing.
We did it.
I'm so. What do we do now?
I don't know.
What do we do?
I'm probably gonna get drunk.
Shall we have a drink and watch Paddington?
Yeah.
Oh my god, okay.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Thanks for watching, guys, and supporting and everything all week, all year, all 3 years, all 35 years of my life. Some of you weren't around for all of it, but whatever. Some of you were if Helen's watching. I'm so out.
I'm quite tired, yeah. I'm like...
That's been that. Absolute mayhem. It is now out. It's now officially out. My book is out. You probably will see it in real actual bookshops, and you can buy it on Waterstones, and you could ask your library to get it in, or your local little bookshop if you want to support them. You can still get it on Unbound. There's all sorts of places, and if you have it already, thank you, and I hope you're enjoying it. And I'm destroyed.
There were a real consistent amount of people.
That's great.
Yeah.
Apparently normal people had 7,000 people, so whatever, Sally Rooney.
Whatever, Sally.
Just because you're awesome.
We're coming for you.
We're coming for you, Sally.